Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Husky Hockey Podcast, your number one resource, everything Husky hockey related. And I'm Weldie, sitting with Andrew, coming off a sweep at home against the mighty Minnesota State Mankato Mavericks. I'm gonna veer off a little bit for a second. I got a quick question for you.
Okay.
Off the top of your head, do you remember who was coach of the year in the Big Ten last year? I'll give you a hint. He's still a coach, so it's not Mel Pearson.
I didn't think it was. I'll say Motzko.
That is correct. Now looking at Grant Cruikshank and how he started this year, I'm starting to think it was a bad call to let him go. Because, I mean, coming up with just two dynamic games, and really the whole start to the season. I got a stat here from Andrew Melro on Twitter, who pointed out that Cruikshank's the first Husky to score 6 goals in a 5-game stretch since Judd Peterson.
Wow, that's a very random player pull there.
In October of 2016. Yeah, I would have not.
I'm sure I would
not guessed that name.
I would have been at all of those games. That was like when they had that third period comeback at Mariucci, and then they won in overtime. I think Peterson scored a couple in that game. Yep. So I would have been at all those games. That was the peak of my traveling fan phase.
Your SCSU traveling fan. And the first to score 6 goals in the first 6 games of the season since Matt Hendricks and Nate DiCasimiro to open the 1-0-2 season.
This great nostalgia references here.
Yeah. And to our fans who never had a chance to watch those early 2000s Husky teams, or really just actually college hockey in the early 2000s in general, it was just setting a wagon on fire and just running it down the main street. It was just chaos everywhere every week. It was so much fun.
Fun time.
Now, like, people want to play defense, and it kind of is dumb. but at that time, it was a heck of a time. So I will say that.
It was more the college hockey sort of punk rock phase before they got signed to the record deal. Now it's more. It's a little cleaner.
Before they sold out.
They've made them shave their face now.
Development for the National Hockey League.
Right.
No, it was back then. It was a little bit different. But just obviously, going to the U of M, and you have to deal with a whole different set of problems when it comes to scholarships. And I think this year it went down to 18 back down to 18 where it normally is. And you got new people coming in for 1 or 2 years because that's how the U likes to recruit. But you let some people go. And as far as Grant Cruikshank, he's been, I can't say enough good things about him and how he has really played the Kevin Fitzgerald role. Right. I would say to a T, and maybe even a little bit more dominant when it comes to at least his size and whatnot. So just overall, it was a great weekend for the Huskies, but I still have some questions. And I know that's kind of like tempers me a little. Like, I'm not usually the guy to be like, well, I don't know. But it was, Mankato did control a lot of possession. Yeah, we forced them to the outside a little bit more. Our goalie still played incredibly wonderful. The defense I thought was good. Except, it was a lot of time in the defensive zone during really a lot of stretches, especially that Friday game. But overall, kind of what was your assessment on the weekend?
Yeah, I was interested what your reaction would be, and I think I'm a little surprised that, not that there's a right or wrong answer to this, but I think we're on the same page. And the key word, I guess the word of the week for me, is opportunistic. That's what describes this series for the Huskies for me.
But last year, I was also very much the person to be like, we don't have that guy who can, step up in those big games, and we don't have, that opportunistic mentality. And it seems like this team definitely has that, and we're showing it's definitely better to have that than not, with how the season has started.
Right. I'm not going to complain or apologize for two wins here, two pretty gigantic wins. I think these wins are going to very much come in handy for the Huskies come tournament time. Coming into the season, on our season preview podcast, I did pick the Huskies to make the field of 16. You did not. We're gonna remember that. But my percentage, my
especially with how Duluth's playing, but we'll get to that later.
My confidence level on that prediction was not very high. I'd say 55, 60%. This weekend, maybe this is an overreaction, but I'd say that my percentage went up to 75% or so this weekend. Just because I think that Mankato, they were very impressive to me. I feel like I've always sold low. Is that the right stock market analogy? I've been bearish on the Mavericks in the past, mostly because I don't think their league is.
I think you're great. 2 for 2 on stock market analogies there. So that was
nice. And so I've never really given them a ton of respect, I'll be honest. They were very impressive this weekend. They were more impressive this weekend than thinking back to last year when St. Cloud played down there in Mankato last year. Again, it's hard for me to remember last week, much less last year. But from my perspective, I didn't see this sort of offensive, as you said, puck control. I don't remember that being the case last year. And just looking at the player, like the guys that they lost, like Smith and Napravnik, surprising that they looked as dominant from a possession standpoint as they did. I would agree with you, though, that I don't think they turned that possession into a ton of grade A chances. Certainly several, but it wasn't. They weren't bombarding shots left and right and juicy chances for that matter all night long. And credit's obviously due to the goaltenders who did each of them make a fair amount of great saves, kept them in the game, kept the game from going pear-shaped, to use a K-fan phrase, and
not a stock market analogy.
All right, yeah. And so, and Huskies being opportunistic, I did read, I read a fair amount of some of the commentary, and I think it was the Chris Dilks recap noted that he thought that the Mavericks were very, I think he said that they're the slowest team when it comes to breakouts.
Yep.
Certainly, I don't know about the slowest. I can't tell you if they're the slowest team in the country here or whatnot about that. But they were definitely lackadaisical in their own zone and sort of dilly-dallying to get the puck out. And I was just doing the video highlights before the show here.
Look at you with the show prep.
4 or 5 of the goals from St. Cloud based on turnovers deep in the Maverick zone, kind of based on picking the pockets of the defense or intercepting a breakout pass and able to cash in
a
on
little
goals.
bit of a trip.
We'll get to that. I wanted to get your take on that, but that's what a good team will do. They'll manufacture chances like that and make their opponents pay for sloppy mistakes like that in their own end. This reminded me of the Austin Ortega Omaha teams, especially when St. Cloud would play them. It seemed that they would always outshoot them. They'd always dominate the possession. But, twice a game that would happen where they'd just cough the puck up and they'd score right away and the Huskies would lose by 1 goal. That's what this sort of reminded me of a little bit this weekend. Again, not apologizing for it. I do think Mankato played better. They deserved not get swept. I'll put it that way. Although at the same time, I think the difference you can see too was, not having McKay, huge difference, because there was at least one of the goals on Saturday was a bad one that Tracy gave up. And so
definitely Micah's.
That's the one I'm thinking of. I mean, then the Brand one right after that was kind of a tougher tip, but the Miller one for sure, I'm sure he's wanting back.
That was a hole in the glove type situation.
And so, they take advantage of plays like that. And so 2 huge wins. And like I said, you're going to bank these. And I think these will be very key wins for this team going forward. So that's my sort of early analysis, and we'll get into some more of the details. And I do want to, again, not apologizing for the sweep, but keep in mind here that they didn't play their best hockey, I don't think. And they let Mankato have their way to an extent. Like I said, I think they did a good job of containing the chances that Mankato was getting based on how much zone time they had. But they can't go. I'm sort of worried about this Bemidji series for some reason. It feels like a trap weekend. Like we kind of went on a high here, sweeping Mankato. They've just got to keep focused this week and take Bemidji seriously. And Bemidji's not as good of a team as Mankato is. They might be a better team than Wisconsin is. Don't tell that to Duluth, but they're an opponent that you need to take seriously. And so I don't want us to sort of get a big head here, because I still think that there's some work to do here. And that weekend against Mankato was not a perfect one. So I just want them, and I have faith in this coaching staff that they're able to keep this team on task and not getting too high over what's been done and keeping that focus on the next opponent. So that's I guess that's my first sort of elevator pitch take. A very long elevator pitch. We were on a very long elevator ride, but that was my initial.
There was a lot of
recap.
Stops on that.
There was a lot of stops. It was a local train elevator. Lots of stops.
You know what just annoys me so much is like those elevators that like take absolutely forever to go one floor, or just like they don't really have steps that you can use. So your elevator's right here, but just such the slowest moving elevators that just annoys me. Anyway, that's enough of my elevator pet peeves. So let's go, kind of game by game, kind of what your thoughts are. First off, I say go game by game, and then I'm going to go over the whole weekend. I don't know if it's because it was unusually warm here in Minnesota this weekend. It was in the 70s this weekend. So, I mean, it was, I grabbed my sunblock for homecoming. And I don't know if that's what I felt. The ice was incredibly sticky. Like, I felt like there was people over skating pucks everywhere, and maybe that's why the breakouts looked a little bit slow. I don't know. Maybe that was just me, but I felt like there were a couple of instances where it looked like the puck didn't, react the way that it probably should have, or it didn't bounce the way that it should have, or whatnot. So, and, both teams just all weekend with their forechecks, I thought they were just absolutely tenacious. And like you said, we were able to capitalize a couple of times on those. And obviously with one of those, I believe it was, Okabe kind of made that play on Friday.
Which one? Because the first two, he basically set up himself. Scoring the first goal, and then the nice dish to Crookshank on the second one.
Yeah, exactly.
He was the best. I thought on Friday he was the best player on the ice, Okabe.
Easily. Yeah, he was. It was, I thought he was dominant. Mavericks came out big, right there at the beginning of the game. First 10 minutes or so, and then we kind of found a little bit more of our groove. And then Okabe finishes off with the goal to kind of turn the momentum back towards the Huskies. I don't know how to say this. Like I've always liked Okabe, so far, I think this season he's one of my biggest surprises. Like from on all around facets of the game, because I've always thought he was kind of like maybe the third wheel a little bit on the Krannila and Miettinen, and maybe a little bit more of the outcast. But the way that he has been just hustling and working on every shift, he's been an absolute force out there, and it's been just a joy to see.
Yeah, I agree. I think Mankato did a fair amount of. They made sure to cover him a little better on Saturday because we didn't see as much of his kind of game-breaking ability on Saturday. But I agree, and we're at this point now where I guess that line, the Okabe, Miettinen, Krannila line is still your, I'm doing quotes, number one line, but that Cruikshank, Miller, and Kupka line as well.
Yeah.
They could easily be number one. I mean, I think based on points, I think they have more points. Kupka's got 7 points already in the season. This is a guy I remember last year. We kind of called out in the carpet saying, what is Kupka's role in this team? Because I'm not sure where he fits and how valuable he is. He's been he's been a force. He's got had the game-winning goal, the power play, kind of greasy goal on Friday. And then obviously setting up the winning goal on Saturday. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves because I do want to discuss that play. But that line as a whole, obviously Cruikshank, we've already sang his praises, and Miller too. It's interesting you had brought up, him or Cruikshank coming in as sort of this year's version of Fitzgerald. That's a great comparison, and mainly because the Fitzgerald Miller bromance from last year looks like he's kind of subbed one out for the other, because him and Miller and Cruikshank have been clicking, I think, from a chemistry standpoint too. So
just dynamic. Yeah, that line has been such a joy. And that's always, at the beginning of the year, I was like, okay, that line, okay, we'll see, kind of how they mesh, how things are going. I mean, it's been fire, and it's been causing a lot of teams headaches. And, how you said earlier, last year, I remember a distinct conversation where, we pulled the goalie for the extra attacker, and here comes Kupka over the boards as our sixth man. And I'm like, wow, what are we doing? Like, This is kind of the best we can do. And I'm eating some crow right now. I mean, he only has 2 goals on the season, but, their goals, first off, that I really like, his goal here on the power play, where it was just kind of digging right in front of the net, and those are the goals here that I like to see.
Right.
Especially on the power play when we get maybe a little bit too Ovechkin office heavy. Getting over to Miettinen for the one timer or whatnot, or granted, Anhorn's been fantastic this year. On the power play too, and feeding from over there, but you need those grease pan goals, as our coaching staff likes to call them. And we didn't have enough of that. You can even debate going the last, how many years we haven't had enough of that. So, I mean, Kupka filling that role was, very welcome to see. And when we ended up taking the lead in that third period. So,
yeah. And to rewind, I guess, to the beginning, because, first 10, 12 minutes of that game, basically all in St. Cloud zone. Mankato seemed to have they really put it to St. Cloud, but credit to the Huskies, they weathered the storm. And like I said, I think the shots were 6-1 or something at that stage, and not a ton of prime opportunities for the Mavericks during that stretch of sort of puck domination. But what really turned that game was a fourth line. I think it was even during a line change, because it's sort of a mishmash of Sahlquist, Brand, and maybe Spalacy. Spalacy did not have a good game on Friday, by the way. But that line he's sort of this year's Kupka for me. He needs to stop. I was surprised he played on Saturday. I hope that the letter that he wears doesn't give him more time than he deserves, because Friday's game was a stinker, and I think he deserved to sit on Saturday. But anyway, that line produced sort of that first sort of turnover for Mankato in their own zone, peppered Rancier with a couple of shots, and then it was, I believe, the shift after that was when Okabe kind of wheels around, just beats Rancier with a nice shot, and from being sort of pinned into your own zone for the first 10 minutes of the game plus to taking, scoring the game's first goal, taking a 1-0 lead. That was huge as far as a momentum swing. Mankato ends up getting that momentum back, sort of getting back to that sort of puck possession domination in the second period. Huskies getting into some penalty trouble. Again, Spalacy, the culprit there. They score a power play goal and then also score on a extra attacker delayed penalty situation to go up 2-1. And then on that ensuing power play, nearly made it 3-1. There was a
Caster.
Yeah.
I think it was that Caster save. I think it was with the paddle. I don't know if we got a really good look at it, but yeah, he was dead to rights.
And maybe that was the big turning point of, we saw the turning point in the first period with that Okabe goal and the shift before it that sort of turned the momentum. That being possibly a game saver too, because if that goes in, Mankato's up 3-1 with the way that they can play, the way that they can possess the puck and sort of eliminate chances. They could win going away, but then that save happens, and then I think it was shortly after that, towards the end of that period, that sort of broken play out of nothing. Okabe beats a guy down in the boards. Nice little behind the back pass to Crookshank. Just a thing of beauty, and there's 2-2, and it's a brand new ball game. And
that's where I put the Kevin Fitzgerald kind of comparison there, because Fitzgerald was so lethal by the net. He was able to finish on those chances. And Okabe with that great pass, kind of looking and seeing Crookshank's streak and just how he was able to put that away was, past Rancier was just kind of a thing of beauty to watch. And it's one of those goals that you kind of see set up, and it's like, here's a chance if this pass connects. Like, it's just one of those things. It's like, there he is, in your NHL game at home, it's an easy pass to make. But when you're Kupka and the puck's ringing around the boards to you, to do that between the legs type of pass, and, to put it right on somebody's stick coming in, Okabe just did just a heck of a play. Yeah. So it was just magnificent to watch.
And then that sort of momentum sort of carried over to forcing a penalty. Mankato taking a penalty late in that period, and that power play carries over into the third, and that's when Kupka scores what turned out to be the last goal of the game winner. And I thought a good effort in the third period, shutting them down. Not a ton of grade A chances from Mankato in that third period, and just a nice win, and one that I fall short of calling these stolen wins. It's like the Huskies stole one. I still think that the Mankato had the better of both of the games from an action and possession standpoint. Certainly by a possession standpoint, you can argue about quality chances, but it's still, I don't think they were dominating to the extent that I would say that the Huskies were, still came out of there stealing one. I think that getting both wins is fortunate, but I still think the Huskies did play a good game. And again, we have to shout out Caster on Friday, and then getting into Saturday, Bassey as well. Both, I thought, excellent. And they're sort of playing, I'm going to try to one-up each other. Yep. They're feeding off each other, using this sort of goaltender tandem to push themselves. And I think they both have save percentages, 940 plus. That's not going to last, but ride it as much as you can. And it's a joy to watch. And hey, talking about Kupka, we had some critical things to say about him last year. Hey, go back and listen to the post Quinnipiac game podcast. I stand behind my that's one of the worst goaltending performances I've ever seen. But I have to give Castor credit. I mean, he's playing he's playing like someone who has something to prove, and who is aware of the Gong Show that was in Allentown, and is setting out to right the record. And all the power to him. He's looking great, and so is Bassey.
Yeah, I had a little bit. I didn't tweet it out. I almost did. I ended up not. But I had a tweet kind of ready to go. Is if Castor gave half the performance that he's had this season, I think we beat Quinnipiac by 2.
Well, I think I said last year a below average goaltender, like a replacement level, meaning like AAA baseball level goaltender, and they would have won by multiple goals. This was sub minor league level. It was bad, and I'm sure he knows it. Yeah, I know it was a tough situation to be thrust upon and all that, but embarrassing at the D1 college level to play like that. But he, like I said, he's playing like a man with a mission, and if that fuels you, then that's what life's about. Life is about having those setbacks, and then you got a fork in the road there. Are you going to, wallow and say, woe is me, or are you going to step it up and say, hey, I can maybe make me a better goaltender? And I think he's taking the latter. At least the first month here. Got a long way to go in the season, but I'm very impressed with his play so far.
Yeah, and I ended up not tweeting it out because I thought, maybe it's just time to turn the page and focus on how he's doing now. Because I mean, who knows if we would have actually made a championship run? Doesn't really matter at this point because he's playing really well right now, and that's what counts right now.
Yep.
So, quick shout out, just because I have to. Apparently, it'll be, they pulled the goalie there on Friday, and seconds left to go in the game. The puck, you can tell that there's an open guy, cross ice pass. Dylan Anhorn gets his stick on it, pokes it away. What a defensive!
Yeah, I forgot about that
play. What a defensive play by him to get that and keep it a 1-goal lead and end up winning the game. And that's, if that puck's anywhere, obviously if it's on net, it's going in, because there was no way Castor was going to stop that one.
Yeah, I mean,
so huge shout out to Dylan Anhorn on that one, who I thought had a strong weekend. I guess, as far as the defense goes, I thought everyone had a pretty strong weekend. Zemer, a little bit tough at times. I thought he looked a little bit out of place. Peart sometimes didn't make the right move, but you're definitely going to get that every now and then.
Still getting frustrated with Bushy too. He's seeming to wanting to do a little too much, and making some risky plays. He's a good stay-at-home guy. That's when Brendan Bushy can play his best. He just needs to not play superhero or think that he needs to, because we've got the offensive-minded defenseman on this team. I don't think he's one of them. So he just needs to, I think, be a little cleaner with his puck handling. Bring the weight when he can. I think Zemer, too, like that play with Morton's goal, I believe, on Saturday, where he kind of goes for the hit. Great play by Morton.
Yeah.
But Zemer sort of looked foolish on that play as well. So, yeah, it's always nice.
Morton and Hiroshi all weekend, I thought, were a real big.
The one guy that really,
side.
Yes, I agree with that. The other guy that really surprised me was that Cilia. Great, like hands, silky smooth Cilia. I'm gonna make that be a nickname for him.
Way to go, Bucci.
God,
Thin Mints.
Now I hate it.
So, moving over, Saturday. I was in the house on Saturday.
You were
my first game.
How was the atmosphere? Homecoming game. 5,000 plus.
Whatever homecoming means, I guess, to St. Cloud State. That's what it was. We have quite the history with homecoming. Couches on fire, riots taken away. Here it is. You don't have a football team, whatever. It was, I didn't get to many games last year, with kids and all, but where the gift shop was, they've now put like a little beer garden type thing. So they've got beer and they've got stools and they got like 3 or 4 TVs kind of like plastered up showing the game. So it's nice that you can go in, you can get your beer and whatnot. But as far as like merchandise goes, in like the suite or the lounge area, like you go up. There's I don't know what you would even call that. I'm not hoity-toity.
It's like where they have the food for the beautiful people, like that sort of area.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. It's got like one little corner that's like a hallway to get out, and that's what they have for merchandise. So that was a little bit disappointing. And the people I went with wanted a Husky jersey, and they didn't even have any Husky jerseys there for sale. And it's just, I feel like that's kind of a missed opportunity.
Yes,
and it's like, I know beer probably is more profitable than merchandise, but I mean, you still
probably $100 a pop on the jerseys there. I mean, so frustrating.
Yeah.
Like, I want to give you my money, but you won't. Like, that's a fail in my book.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel that way when I'm a big Nintendo fan. I love my Nintendo video games. I don't have a new 3D Metroid game. I don't even have a remake of the old 3D Metroid games that I can play on the Switch. Like, Nintendo, I want to give you money. And they're like, well, here's the Pokemon game. And I'm like, I'm not the demographic for Pokemon. But anyway, I digress. That goes into something different.
You can still take the beer to your seat. Right? Or is this saying this beer garden? It's not like how Duluth has it where you have to drink it in that area.
Correct. Yeah, you don't have to drink it right there. You definitely, there's not enough room for you to mingle or hang around.
Yeah, so from what you're saying, if it was the old gift shop, that's not a terribly large space.
Yeah. But they do have some tables kind of set up. So if you do want to have 2 beers and just kind of sit there and even watch the game from there, and not be far
right behind
the
net
beer,
there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's not too bad. But I thought overall the atmosphere was amazing. I thought it felt like, honestly, it felt like an old school WCHA matchup.
Really?
Like pre-conference split and everything like that. It felt, the atmosphere I thought was great. The fans were great. I thought the student section, there were a lot of students there. And maybe it's still early in the season, because I always feel like the students really show up, at the start of the season and then kind of tail off. And it was like that even when I was in college too. So, but they were there. They were into it. They had the band there, which I love a college band there. The band isn't, they don't have like the pomp and circumstance of all the other bands and places that have bands, but it was still, I like that atmosphere. I like the feeling of band. The puppy pound I thought was well represented as well on the other side of the rink. It was great. It was like it felt awesome for this type of atmosphere in a game that wasn't involving like Minnesota or North Dakota. And to have it be Minnesota State, I think is actually so much cooler to have that type of atmosphere, because I thought the place was rocking. Scoreboard looks amazing.
That was my next question. Yeah, so that sounds good. And how about our PA guy? I love our PA guy. And the sound system,
really
like
good.
How what's the equipment behind him? Is that working well?
The sound system's a lot better. However, I don't know if they just didn't update like the pre-roll ads or whatnot. So anytime there was like a recording of an ad that had to be played, that was still mumbled.
Okay.
So I don't know what exactly.
I think the building.
Like, I don't know if it's
the building is kind of doomed. I think from an acoustic
and that's
standpoint,
probably it.
Like you can put some lipstick on a pig, but at some point it's always going to sound pretty bad. I did see it was weird. They got Chuck like working the penalty box. I saw him.
Chuck, it was homecoming. It was homecoming. So yeah, Chuck.
I was wondering if
the
that's just a one-off, or if that's going to be if I'm going to be seeing him, all the home games. But nice to see him there.
It should be. Yeah, it was nice. He got a hell of a standing ovation too.
Oh, good.
And but yeah, the PA guy. It was actually really interesting because I watched his Twitter. He had like a 5-minute video like of him, ice level before, I think it was before Friday's game. And kind of like, oh, here's the behind the scene, here's the tour, here's like all the sheets, and here's what I have of, how I keep track of things, and just kind of, and then here's the ice, and it was kind of cool to get that view. But he also had a sheet that listed out what can be reviewed.
Oh,
and what can be a coach's challenge or an official review, or what is coach's challenge only. So I took a screenshot of that because I was like, I don't know if I've ever actually seen anything like that, like listed so succinctly and in plain English.
If
you have a chance,
did that get up to Jim Rich's hands? Because that would be helpful, I think.
It probably hasn't. So we should make sure that does happen. Yeah.
So now, does he? I can't really tell watching on TV. No woos. Is he wooing after goals?
Woos.
He's making his own thing, or
what? He is making his own thing, and it hasn't quite caught on yet, and I think it's going to catch on about halfway through the season. So what he's doing after announcing the goal, he is saying "Go Huskies." And he's trying to cue the dog pound and everyone else to woo.
That's clever. It's not ripping off Chuck, but it's keeping the tradition alive. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So it's like that. You could tell that's what he's kind of trying to do, and like some people are starting to catch on as more people are kind of seeing because he says "Go Huskies," and like you can see him kind of trying to gesture to the dog pound, but obviously you don't like have a great view of the PA announcer from the dog pound. But that's what he's trying to kind of get going, and yeah, I really like that. I was like, okay, that's unique, that's fun, that's different, but yet familiar. So
you seem at peace with this guy being the one to. You got passed over for this one. For what? Jason. What's his? I can't remember his last name.
I could not hold a candle to him. Like, he was so incredibly good. Not gonna lie.
It's almost like he's a professional announcer, and he's done this for many years. It's weird.
So exactly. It's like he's he's done plenty of PA announcing for wrestling or Olympic sports and whatnot. Who knows? Jason Bryant.
Jason Bryant. Okay.
Yep. On Twitter, verified. So, but it was, I thought he did a wonderful job. I thought everybody did a wonderful job. It was a lot of fun. And also the game didn't disappoint.
Right.
As far as, kind of the excitement goes. So, we can definitely kind of get into that game. Obviously, everyone's just talking about the game-winning goal. So, do you want to start there and then move backwards? Do you want to Tarantino it, or do you want to go?
No, we can start there. Did you think it was a trip?
Yes. Especially if you're going through, like, there were 6, maybe 7 tripping calls all weekend. I mean, they weren't shy about tripping calls, and some of them I thought were not tripping. Like, they were a little ticky-tacky. That one, though, I think definitely was one that I think should have been called. And then when it wasn't, I think it was one of those things. It's like the ref maybe internally kind of was like, maybe that's a little bit of a penalty. But then like he hesitated, so it would have been too late because then it was in the back of the net. So you can't like call a penalty after the goal is scored. So. But, what I think happened is that the ref was just kind of focused on the stick and where that wasn't where the trip was. It was the skate to the skate on back. It wasn't purposeful or anything like that, but it was just, I mean, still by definition, it was kind of a leg tripping the leg and falling backwards and whatnot. So that's how I look at it. There must be something in that corner of the ice or that side of the ice about referees and blown calls, because obviously Perbix last year with the hook from Minnesota that didn't get called on that side of the ice too. So there must be something over there. The ghosts of Herb Brooks' past or something like that is keeping some.
And similar to that play, the ref was right there.
Yeah,
he was looking right at it. I watched the replay, I don't know, 10 times. I'm biased, obviously. I'm a hypocrite. If it was going the other way, if it was the other way around, I'm sure I'd be more on the side of it was a missed call. I do think it was a borderline call. I don't think that it was obviously a trip. And he was going for the stick. Livingstone, who was the defenseman, had no idea that Kupka was behind him. He was not covering his ass, literally. And I think Kupka is going for the stick and makes the poke check. Livingston is taken off guard because he doesn't know that he's got a guy behind him. The bumping, and
actually lifts up the stick prior to touching the skate.
Correct, and the skates make contact inadvertently, and he loses balance, and he's not strong on his skates. I don't really think that a penalty needs to be called there because a guy doesn't know, he doesn't have his backside covered, and he's not strong on his skates. And Livingston
did not seem too upset about it either.
I think because he realized he got his pocket picked, and he didn't have full awareness of the Husky players that were on his team, and like all weekend, lollygagging in that end of the zone on their breakouts. And from the perspective of, it was like 3 minutes to go in the game. It'd be a pretty dicey call to call a guy for an offensive zone tripping there and give Mankato a 2-minute power play with 3 minutes and change left in that game. I think that'd be a dicey call too. So, and I do think you mentioned that a lot of ticky-tack calls early in the game. I do think that played a part in them swallowing the whistle there, because I think they probably realized that there was 4 or 5 penalties in the first 5 minutes of the game, realized that the pace of the game took a while to establish because of sort of an over-calling of penalties early in the game, and I think they were sort of consciously letting them play at that point in the game. Obviously, like I said, I got Cardinal and black colored glasses here, and the play worked out perfectly for the Huskies. If it was the other way around, I'm sure I'd be more critical about it. I even looked up the USA Hockey definition of tripping, and they have a clause in there that if the ref believes that the play was a hook check or a poke check that was intended to play the puck, intended to get the puck, that they do not have to call a tripping there. And so you can read the rule in a way that there is a subjectivity in there. And so
one of my favorite lines in Star Wars is when Obi-Wan spoiler alert, by the way, if you haven't seen Return of the Jedi, when Obi-Wan appears as a force ghost and Luke says, but you said that Darth Vader betrayed and murdered my father. And Obi-Wan goes, the guy I knew as Anakin turned into Darth, that's when I know he died. And it's like, so what I told you was correct from a certain point of view. So I always kind of like to add that, or that I always think of that. It was like how you read, from a certain point of view. And that's kind of what you're saying here, is that
right?
If you read the rule from a certain point of view, that's still within the rules, because he did clearly play the puck, because it was on the stick before he even fell down.
All I'm saying, it was not. I don't think it was as obvious of a call as some people that I've read would like it to think. This was not like the descent fall.
Is that a shot at Dilks right there?
Well, I saw Shane Frederick too, another Mankato writer, say the same thing. Basically, lead off his write up of it with this, the trip. That's the whole game summary essentially, or the number one point at least. I
tweeted at him. He didn't respond to me, but I tweeted at him because he was talking about how, but the NCHC rule officials seem, I'm led to believe that they have figured it all out. And I'm like, who has ever said that our officials are the best? I don't know anyone who's ever said that. No answer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it worked out for the Huskies. I'm trying my best to be objective here, and you can laugh at that. You can clip this here and say this is these deluded Husky fans, or at least one. I'll say from my end that I think it was a good play actually, and I'm gonna say good no call. Clip that, and circulate around that. We could use the listeners. Trust me. So
there we go.
Yeah, go ahead, mock and ridicule me, please do.
There you go. I'll put that on the TikTok. But it goes to again our tenacity on the forecheck. Not giving up on plays. Which I have praised. During the Wisconsin series, and I'm praising here for this series as well. And then our opportunistic tendencies. Kupko was there, passed over to Cruikshank, didn't make a mistake, just buried it. So, the place went nuts, and you really felt that in the atmosphere there in the crowd. It was pretty awesome to watch. Overall, like you said, first period really tough getting going. So penalties, trip, interference, trip. And I think some of it had to do also with the slow ice. I just thought it was just maybe like it was just a little too melted or whatnot. So like it wasn't as fast. So people think they have to gain an advantage a little bit more because they feel like they're not moving fast enough. I don't know. Maybe that's all poppycock. But Huskies ended up catching Mankato on a slow breakout. And the just amazing play by Micah on that shift and Cruikshank to really get that turnover and end up Cruikshank's both of his goals were pretty much from the same spot and nearly the same setup, but that pass by Micah Miller, that saucer backhand pass was just absolutely unbelievable.
Oh yeah. At first I thought you were talking about the second goal, but this was the first. This is the shorty in the first, which again, I mean, very similar plays, except you had Cruikshank score the first, Miller with the second play, and obviously the second one at even strength. But it's funny that we're sort of confusing the two because they were sort of, as I said, started with those sloppy Mankato in their own zone, breaking the puck out kind of play. Same with the third one, too. That was Molinar kind of did a lot of the dirty work there, bringing it out to Trable and then getting the tip from Brand to put it up 3-1. A lot of those first three goals are very similar in a lot of ways as far as how those plays originated, which is sort of kind of a broken play from nothing.
Yeah. Bassi, I thought, played really well in net. I think like the first goal that they scored on that rebound was really one of the only like big rebounds that he gave up that didn't have a Husky defenseman there to kind of clear it. And that whole series leading up to it was just kind of like you felt like something bad was going to happen. Mankato really kind of stuck to the play, or tied down the Huskies in the defensive zone, and they were able to get the rebound and kind of pop it back in. But then, Miller comes back because Miller scored the second one, right?
Correct. And then Brand right after that, a minute later.
And then Brand with the tip, yeah. And that second one, I mean, where it just goes through, it just goes through Tracy's mitt like that. You could tell that was just kind of just knocked the wind a little bit out of Mankato's sails.
Surprised how they played
which which, considering how much they dominated that second period too. I mean, we had 2 goals on 3 shots that period. So, I mean,
speaking about the Mankato goalie, I mean, or goaltending, we talked about it going into the series on our preview last week. Tracy was the guy who played both the games against Duluth last weekend. Figured that he would have, even if they're going to split the time, I thought that they would have Tracy start on Friday. So I was surprised when Rancier started. And I actually thought that Rancier played better of the 2 goalies. Like we mentioned, the Tracys, that Miller goal was one that he wants back. But I was a little surprised that they went Rancier Tracy and not have Tracy start just based on his weekend against UMD last weekend. But yeah, and getting up 3-1 there, that second goal for Mankato I thought was one that the Huskies would want back. It wasn't I think that Bassi was pretty screened there, but had a chance the defense had a chance to get the puck out, and I think that was Cilia, one of his plays and stick handling plays that he was able to do some fancy maneuvering, keeping the shot on. I think he took a shot, sort of whiffed on it or was deflected, but then it went right to the stick of Grohl, who did a little turnaround and scored it. That one was sort of a bit of a backbreaker. You almost thought you want to get into the end of the second up 2, but when Mankato scores that second goal, giving them that extra life, and then going into the third period up until the time that Morton scores the tying goal, pretty classic Dahl stall going on, I thought, from the Husky standpoint. Yeah. And the Dahl stall was leaking oil. I think I texted a buddy at that point. When they tied it up, it's like, yeah, it had been creaking there, and you can almost see that one coming. And very nice play by Morton. As I said, Zemer sort of took a chance on the body, missed, but a very nice play by Morton, who I thought was impressive, as we mentioned in the weekend. They've. I was surprised. I don't think you even mentioned Brendan Furry, is it? I did not realize until they mentioned on the broadcast that he was the preseason CCHA Player of the Year. Very quiet, I thought, on the weekend. Yeah. Sandelin, I thought, was very quiet. It's like this Morton had a great weekend. Cilia had a good weekend. They had some guys in those defense. I think Livingstone, even though he had some defensive mishaps, can tell that he's a good quarterback, power play, or just even strength. Hiroshi also excellent on the back end. So they do have some high-end guys. It's just the guys that at least the preseason CCHA media thought with Furry didn't really. I think they even dropped him down to the 4th line on Saturday. It's if you're a Mankato fan, you're probably getting a little worried about that development. But then 3-3 and thinking that this game's going to be going to overtime, and then the play happens that we just spent 10 minutes discussing. So
right, exactly.
But 4-3, and like I said, we'll take it, and we'll take the 6-0 too.
Yeah, exactly. Mankato right now sits at 3-3. They had a tough start to the season.
Sure.
Don't play. Anybody who's ranked right now, they don't play anybody the rest of the season. That would be ranked right now, if that makes sense.
And of course that might change, but it's not going to change all that much, and they'll be fine. I mean, the 3-3 here against the Gophers, St. Cloud, and Duluth. Duluth's got to pick things up here, but wouldn't be surprised if all three of those are going to be tournament teams. So that's sort of their formula. They got to play a tough non-conference schedule in order to make up for the kind of the weak schedule that they have in conference. But based on what I saw here against St. Cloud, they should cut through the CCHA like butter. I would think this is a single-digit loss team, Mankato. Meaning from St. Cloud's perspective, these wins are gigantic, which is good.
Very much so. Your Go Huskies Woo Player of the Weekend. This, if you want, I got dragged a little bit on Twitter for waiting so long to get to it last time. So
we didn't forget about it this week.
I didn't forget about this time, but still, we're an hour into the show here.
Oh, this will be a long one this week.
So, for Go Huskies Woo, his vote goes to Grant Cruikshank. Just, saying that, Okabe was also a really good choice, but Crookshank, obviously um, his weekend overall was just dynamic in, pretty much every aspect. I didn't get a really chance to say it, but oh man, were we atrocious on face-offs this
Oh
weekend.
my God. That's a
Felt like we
huge part of the possession game that Mankato won is just because they, especially Friday, they just slaughtered the Huskies on faceoffs.
So, but yeah, obviously, 2 goals and an assist, and I talked about him also in the beginning of the show. That Moscow buried him on the depth chart there in Minnesota, and now it's looking like a very not very good coach of the year move to keep him stifled. But your player of the weekend. Who you got?
I don't like being back to back, like having the same player of the weekend in back to back weeks, and I also don't like doubling up with Go Huskies Woo, but I have to agree with Crookshank. I would have given it to Okabe if he would have, like hit the score sheet on Saturday. I just don't think he was as much of a factor on Saturday than he was on Friday. And the other thing too is these goalies keep flip flopping. Like if we're gonna give it to the tandem goalies, I would have given it to them at some point at one of the 3 weekends. But because they're splitting time, I don't feel that it's right to give one of them the player of the weekend for both games. So I think it's got to be Crookshank as well. And basically for what we've said already in the show, and he's just coming up with those huge key goals and turning point goals, and so. Is it 3 for 3 again? Is that what you're going for? Or you got something different?
I mean, yeah, it is. It is 3 for 3. It's tough to argue that it's not. But I mean, a lot of what Crookshank was able to do too was set up by his line and set up by the chances he was offered. He was just kind of the lucky, or maybe not lucky, recipient of those bounces, but because he's got to put himself into those positions. Whereas, some players like Miettinen, sometimes doesn't put himself into those prime scoring areas. And, to see Crookshank there and getting those chances. I mean, we've had beautiful passes by, Okabe and by Kupka and Miller and whatnot. So it really that line, especially that line on Saturday, was just dynamic. But I think you do still have to give it to Crookshank, and I got to eat a little bit of crow too because I've been really impressed with Kupka's play.
Yeah.
And I've been really hard on him, for the past 4 years.
Right.
So, Dylan Hanhorn, like I said, I thought he had a good weekend as well. Saved the game, I think, on Saturday or on Friday, with the stick out of the way. And I thought he was pretty good also on Saturday. Beating a team of this caliber also without Ludke, I think again goes a lot to the depth of this defensive team. And then I thought Micah was just a buzzsaw as well, especially on that Saturday game. So, that's again 3 for 3. I think he's kind of the standout player with Crookshank, but a lot of people did really well in their roles, and I think that's kind of a key to having a deep team that everyone kind of plays their role and excels in it. So
yeah, you bet.
So switching over then, next week we got a home and home with Bemidji, and it's you go previous or recent history, you kind of say, okay, well, Bemidji State, we should be able to kind of take care of that. Every once in a while, they do have kind of a surprising game where you see like they beat a North Dakota or something like that, or they give some teams fits. But it's a series that I definitely kind of look past kind of at the beginning of the season when I looked at it as Mankato, and then, okay, we kind of have, kind of a swell here, or kind of a lull here with Bemidji, and then go back up to Denver and Western Michigan, and then go down. This is kind of the wave on the down. But Bemidji so far this year, they're it's early. We don't know how good Michigan Tech is, but they're coming off a 5-2 and a 2-2 tie. Arizona State, they 5. They put up 5. They got shut out the night before, but they put up 5 against them. But what I'm really surprised to see is just overall the amount of shots on goal that they're putting on. They had a little bit less against Michigan Tech on Saturday, but Friday they put up 42 shots on Michigan Tech. You don't see Bemidji putting 42 shots on a weekend against teams in the past. So I don't know what Sartori has in the water there in Lake Bemidji, probably, right? It's gonna be an interesting series where it's not one where we can let off the gas. And Cruikshank, after one of the games, was kind of saying that they took a little bit to heart about where they were in the rankings and how they felt a little bit slighted. And now they're definitely getting the props in those rankings now. But, this isn't, I think you said it earlier, you can't really get a big head here. And you got to really hunker down and just really take care of business, because you can't undo all of the good things that you did over, against Mankato. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, just the 4 games so far this year for Bemidji. That's, Huskies have played 6. Some teams have played 8 games already this year. So a light start to the schedule for Bemidji.
And Ivies have played 0.
Well, they'll start this weekend finally. I know that they're special and they don't get to start until, Halloween weekend. But so yeah, just the 4 games. They came back on Friday against Tech. They were down 2-0 and scored the final 5 goals of that game, and then they were up 2-0 on Saturday, including up with extra attacker last minute or minute and a half when Tech ties it up, and then Bemidji scores an extra league point with the shootout on Saturday. So 2-1 and 1. 2-1-0-0 and 2-1-0-1-0, I think. That's what it is. Yeah, you're mentioning
Jim Rich's head explodes right now.
Mentioning that they put up some shots. I think in the last few years they've gone away from the, I'm going to make Jacques Lemaire blush with my Bemidji Beaver Trap. They've been going away from that a little bit. They brought in the Sillinger brothers the last few years. They had the Fitzgerald quadruplets or whatever, the Spy Kids. So they've been going away from that sort of the traditional sort of Bemidji that we know and love. But
I forgot, did we ever have a Fitzgerald from Fitzgerald and Fitzgerald goal? I think we did once. Finally,
I'm sure we did. I mean, they played 4 years there. I'm sure we did. And they played on the same line, I think. So I would imagine so.
We definitely had Paling from Paling and Paling.
That's right. Yeah, so I'm sure they did. But the Cylinders, as I mentioned, are no longer there. Owen, who had a 47-point year last year. I was surprised to remember that. But he gone to the pros. And the younger one, Lucas, still has NCAA eligibility, and he transferred to Arizona State. So he would have already had his quick reunion up in Bemidji when the Sun Devils played up there. Their top 4 scoring forwards from last year are all either left, graduated, or signed a pro deal. So they lost their top 4 forwards from points production standpoint. The only other guy in the top 5 was a defenseman that's returning, Elias Rosen, I think is his name. I had the name here before, but then I lost. Yeah, Rosen. Yeah, he's got the little accent mark there. He's put up like 20. He's like averaged 23, 24 points in his career there for Bemidji. So high scoring defenseman for the point there. But so far this year, having to replace all those points, as I mentioned, top 4 leading scorers from the forward position. dipped into the transfer portal. Their leading scorer right now, 6 points in 4 games, a guy named Mitchell Martin, who transferred from Canisius. Their second leading scorer is Eric Martin. They got Martin and Martin. That won't be confusing for Jim Rich. But Martin has 5 points.
He's only got 1 game, though, so I guess that's a plus.
That's right. Yeah, he's only got the Saturday game, I guess. Also brought in a couple of other transfers is Caden Pickering from St. Lawrence, Jackson Judding from CC. That name might be familiar to old WCHA fans. The nephew of Troy Judding, the old Mankato coach. The old, 6'11" Mankato coach, Troy Judding. Guy is a tall guy. Both of their goaltenders, who they had last year, Scholl and Enright, they're both back. Huskies would have seen both of them last year. They flip-flopped, similar to how the Castor and Bassey situation's going. And of the 4 games, Scholl has played 3, Enright 1. So wouldn't be surprised if they split time here. Early in the season, we just don't. We're still in that we're in a weird spot in the season where we're still kind of hinging on last year's stats to kind of fill in the gaps, but we're also got, some early results from this year, so it's still sort of a transition between, is it last year or is it this year? What's the sample size that we want to look at here? So, but considering what they lost last year and the fact that the Huskies were able to handle them in the sweep last year, like I said early in the show, I mean, if you swept Mankato, you should be able to sweep Bemidji. I know you're playing up in Bemidji on Friday, and road game and all that. St. Cloud has dominated this series.
Schedule's different.
Yeah. St. Cloud has handled this series very well. Just 1 loss in the last 12 games, dating back to 2013. So basically in the NCHC era, when these teams have played almost every year in that time period in non-conference, and just 1 Bemidji win and a couple of ties, and the rest of those St. Cloud wins. So this is a matchup that St. Cloud has been able to handle historically, but that doesn't mean anything this weekend. You still got to play some good hockey, and haven't heard anything about Lutke. Like I mentioned a few weeks ago, would be surprised to see him back before conference play started, and probably longer than that, but I guess there is that possibility of him getting cleared to play whenever he can be back, and whenever he is deemed healthy to play, he will be in the lineup. But something to keep an eye on there. But I'm feeling, like I said, I have a sort of weird feeling about this weekend, just because I almost feel like they're going to drop one this weekend. But looking on paper, the way the Huskies are going and their history against Bemidji and what Bemidji's got back this year, this is a favorable matchup for the Huskies. So I don't want to see a sort of flat performance here, and I'm confident that this team is above that. That they have eyes on the prize here, and they're not going to take this weekend lightly because of the results from last weekend. So let's hope. That's my take on that, and let's just see a couple of good games and just some business-like wins here. That's what I'm looking for this weekend.
Yeah, and looking at some of the other stats, and again, like you said, we're at that weird time of the season where stats don't really mean a lot right now. But Bemidji's penalty kill right now was at 66%. And with our power play, at 28%, our penalty kill, we finally gave up a power play goal, at sitting at 95. On paper, it's definitely one that we should take care of, but it's definitely one that I can feel we can look past if we're thinking too much about Denver on the horizon. So it's going to be an important one. These are the games that you can't afford to drop in college hockey. At the same time, it's not, I'm not going to be Chicken Little here if things kind of go haywire, but it's I'm excited to see how they respond to a little more national spotlight on them, so to speak.
That's a good point. That's something like last year, once they hit number 1, which they were like in early November. I think it was when they played Omaha. and they kind of had they kicked ass on Friday, and then they lost that overtime game to Omaha. I think that was the weekend that they were number one. They may have been number one in October as well, but it seemed like that was their peak of the year. And not that it was all downhill. I mean, they still made the tournament, but there was only one way to go from first. So, yeah, you don't want to peak too early, of course, but at the same time, you don't want to complain about 6-0 and 6 regulation wins, and 8-0 would be even better, especially going into Denver. But yeah, I think that is, especially with the amount of guys that are on this group or on this team that were on the team last year, remembering that sort of early season peak did not and the early season number one ranking did not stay very long. Hopefully that will be some more motivation. I'm surprised. I mean, you mentioned that they obviously are aware of the Ustro rankings in the St. Cloud clubhouse, and so I don't. Yeah, we can make some. Yeah. We'll make some Brown jokes about that later, but I don't know if they should really take a ton of stock into that. But I guess it's the only poll that you got, or that and the USA Today poll. I don't know. I feel it's kind of silly to bandy that about, especially this time of year, so early in the season still. But if they wanted to use that as motivation, maybe they'll use hey, we're not number one, right? Minnesota's got a couple of losses on their record, and here we are at 6-0, and we're not even number one. Like, come on, let's prove it. So maybe there still is some motivation to be had there.
It's sitting at 6-0. We started the 2017-2018 season. We started that 7-0. Before we got swept at Denver. So I mean. And then I don't want to talk about how that season ended, so we're not going
or the next season for that matter.
Yeah,
I think they were
that
7-0.
Season we only.
I think they were 7-0 that year too in Larson's first year. Maybe am I missing?
Nope, they were 5-0.
And then the Northeastern loss.
Then the Northeastern loss. For some reason. Then we went from November 2nd to January 4th against Union without a loss.
Okay, I was at that. I was at that Northeastern game. I went to the Boston game here, but for some reason I thought that was late.
7 rep too.
They had more games in the season before that series, but I suppose if it was like late October, it would have been 5-6 games there. So. Yeah, this team has been there before. Larson has coached teams that have gone off to these good starts in the past. We know how some of those have ended. Not so impressive, but keep the foot on the gas and keep the target in mind and just take care of business.
The 03-04 season, which again, I think there could be like a book written about that season.
I think you were going to be the one to write that book.
There was a tie in there with Michigan Tech, but we went the first 9 games unbeaten.
9
times.
9 times.
Yeah, we were 8-0-1.
Was that your first year on campus?
That was.
Okay,
yep.
So you're a year older than I am. So my first year was a bad year. So I don't personally have any remembrances of that 03-04 team. You are carrying that torch solo on this podcast. I only remember that 04-05 Dave Iannazzo, is that his name? That team was not very good. And that was Dahl's last year. They were not so hot, but still have some good memories from that year just because that was the first year of my time on campus.
That was Gordon's
first year,
freshman year,
that's right?
Yep.
So yeah, the pieces were building.
Iannazzo, he was born to score.
Yeah, Jason Montgomery, I think, was the goalie. Or Boron, was it Boron? Maybe both of them.
Yeah, both of them were. They kind of split time. I think Boron did most, but Monty got some time in there too. But I say that there could be a book written about the 03-04 is because we were poised obviously to we didn't have a loss until mid-November, and then the wheels kind of fell off, and then we tried to get it back, and then we lost the last 7 and 4 to Minnesota because we had the last season was at Mariucci, and then the standings, the 5 and 6 teams that played each other was Minnesota
also at
was
Mariucci.
the 5, and St. Cloud was the 6. And then, but it was weird because that whole season was like, I don't know, Minnesota was like they were a much better team than the 5 and the standings indicated. It was a weird season. It was weird because we got, like, looking at those games, like, we just got crushed. And really all of those last games, we lost 3-0 to Wisconsin, 7-1 to CC, 5-2 to Colorado College, 7-4 to Minnesota, 4-2, 6-1, 7-3. Like, everything just hit belly up.
I think it must have been 4-5 actually. I think that was just 10-team league then. If there
were 10 teams, then the top 5 got home ice.
God, am I? Yeah. I'm the idiot here. I'm thinking 8 teams for some reason. God, yeah, I'm an idiot.
NCHC.
Yep. Yeah. Too much NCHC in my head. Edit that out. Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen.
So, but anyway, I digress. That's our, we're old.
Yes.
Portion of the show. So. Yeah, so that a little bit of a preview about what's coming here for Bemidji. Hopefully, we can win a face-off. That would be nice. Yep. I saw that Lukey was skating. And it sounds like, with him, I feel like there's no real need to rush him back. I feel like this defensive core is strong, even if, I think we got some room to play with on the defensive side. So I'm not too concerned about, we need to rush him back. Maybe it'd be nice to get it if he is ready to get a game against Bemidji before, going right to Denver. But either way, when it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I think he's going to be ready, and there's no need to get him out on the ice right away with how well everything is clicking.
Yeah, I think that Wiley's been playing pretty decent. I mean, I would say that he's sort of the winner of the freer ice time, or the ice time availability due to Lukey's injury. He only played the Friday game. Wiley did this week. They actually gave Reiners some action on Saturday. Wiley's sitting in favor of Reiners as that 7th defense. The defense, like I've noticed some things about Bushy, and we've got some nitpicks with Pert and Zemer here and there that we've mentioned. But all in all, it's been a pretty sound unit so far. And so, but Lukey's a guy that he's one of your top 2 defensemen going into the season, or top 3, depending on how good you see Pert. Definitely a guy that we could use. And so, I'd love to see maybe play that if he's okay to go, maybe that Saturday home game, and get him some action before you head out to Denver. I think that's not a bad idea, but obviously he's got to wait for the green light. We're not the doctors here.
Yep.
So,
yep, exactly. So, we'll kick around to the rest of the league and the college hockey, but I believe we have a sponsor. So if you want to go ahead and kick off the ad read, take it away.
Yeah, you're hopefully you've figured out Andrew is not the best salesman, because when I was selling these spots, I was selling them under our summer schedule, once a month. We're back in season here, so it's every week now. We have a podcast, so that's 4 more spots available for sponsorship opportunities on the Huskies Hockey Podcast. So, I mean, we've got one back, and it's one of our favorites coming back this week. I'm selling them on the monthly package, but the wheels are in motion here to get them on a weekly package. So, but back by popular demand, it's everybody's favorite. Today's podcast is brought to you by GrandPaid. GrandPaid, everybody. GrandPaid is a leader in sports drinks specifically targeted to people over the age of 60. Each can of GrandPaid is custom engineered with a blend of vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that gives seniors the ability to go the distance and feel their strongest. Whether it's playing in your senior hockey league, relaxing with some chair yoga, or half power walking around the mall, Grampade is the secret for strength and stamina. Noted 2001 Wimbledon champion Goran Ivanisevic says, Grampade serves me right, keeps me on the ball, and makes sure I'm not at fault. Grampade is proud to announce the debut of Grampade Jr., perfect for those young whippersnappers in the 40 to 59 demographic. Listeners to the Huskies Hockey Podcast can get 20% off and get a free keychain can opener when you go to grampade.net/order and enter the promo code Husky. That's grampade.net/order and enter the promo code HUSKY. Grampade. To stay golden in your golden years, choose Grampade. GRAMPAID. Grampade.
Thank you so much for Grampy.
It's good to have them back. Good to have them back.
Yep, exactly. So, yeah, around the league, heck of a weekend in college hockey. You know, obviously the big series, North Dakota, Minnesota, and both ended in overtime victories for each team. And what were your thoughts on Pitlick throwing the stick out after scoring the second goal?
I hope he really savored it, because it'll be the last time he ever does it. Unless it's a game winner, like you said,
it's a game winner.
The dumbest thing was that it was during the game, so he had a 10-minute misconduct to sit and think about how
and watch North Dakota rattle off 4 goals.
Right. Yeah. Betcha Motzko had a little talking to after the game about that one. But yeah, it was an interesting series. I was able to watch a fair amount of it. I mean, they started the game earlier than the Huskies game on Friday. So basically watched first period of the Gopher North Dakota game on Friday, and then basically watched the last period on Saturday because the Huskies game was over at that point. So, and sort of had it in my iPad. I got a setup where I got an iPad with like a secondary game that I'm sort of cycling through as I'm sort of watching that during commercial breaks of the Husky game. So
as you're cycling through Flow Sports and
TV, ESPN Plus, Big Ten Plus. I got a problem, man. But that was a good game. I mean, that series, it could have been a sweep either way. You know, like North Dakota having a late lead on Friday, Gophers with the tying goal late, and then North Dakota with a 2-goal lead into the third period on Saturday. Gophers tying that up, and I thought the Gophers kind of had the puck possession and shot advantage throughout the whole weekend too. I mean, very easily they could have swept both games in regulation, for that matter. So, classic sort of back and forth rivalry weekend. Looked like the crowd is keyed up for that one. You know, it does make me even like, I know that maybe you said that you're getting sick of the pining for the WCHA days, but God, it would be, I think, a little better if these were conference games. Just more deeper into the season. Yeah. Deeper into the season, I think, at least. But
especially when I also compared the Mankato St. Cloud game to old WCHA days.
Right.
Everyone listening is like, okay, boomer.
I know that's getting tiresome, but at the same time, like, it does remind me, at least, how good it was back in those days. But it looks like the crowd, like Mariucci's saw this at the end of last year, setting attendance records, I think, in that Big Ten title game against Michigan. Bobby has brought him back, and the attendance was getting a little dicey there with under Lucia's in his last couple of years. And there's a lot of factors. I'm an attendance nerd, went on like a deep dive years ago. And there was a lot of factors beyond college hockey and beyond the conference split even. There's sports-wide issues as far as why attendance is down for various sports. But college hockey has its own sort of unique ones too, unique reasons for that drop-off. But seeing some of these teams rebound with good attendance, like the Gophers, it's good to see, and I hope they can keep that up. And obviously, being able to keep North Dakota on the schedule on a regular basis is a huge factor in that. Just from my perspective, like, what I don't like is from St. Cloud's perspective, I think there is a sense of duty to keep the Minnesota teams on the non-conference schedule, the ones that aren't in the NCHC. So you want to play Mankato, you want to play Bemidji, you want to play the Gophers somewhat regularly, like if not every year, like every other year. The problem there is that takes up all your non-conference slots. Like St. Cloud would usually always play an Eastern team at least once in non-conference. They used to play like the ECAC, a bunch. Quinnipiac they played back in the day in season. They even played Brown, our favorite ECAC team. I remember a series against Brown. I don't know, 2010, 2011, somewhere in that range. But because you've got 10 non-conference games, and if you're playing, at least this year, you're playing 6 of those games against these Minnesota schools, and then you have St. Thomas joining the fray too, and you want to play them because they're a local-ish team. You don't really have the variance in the non-conference schedule that you once did. So that's the one sort of downside one of the downsides in my mind is that, 10 years ago, all these games would have just been conference games played somewhat deeper in the season. And October, November would sort of be a rotating set of characters. Yeah, we got Clarkson this weekend. We've got, Bowling Green. I don't know. Yeah, just insert the different team. Like back-to-back years now, we've had the same kind of non-conference opponents. I kind of want a little variance. But at the same time, I like seeing these Minnesota teams too. I don't know why I'm off on this tangent. We were talking about North Dakota and Minnesota, but it was a good series. We'll get back to
I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I think this is just also kind of the deal or the payback from right after COVID when everybody was trying to keep things local.
Right. Yeah,
it was 1920 when we played Princeton, and then we played at Northern Michigan, and so I mean, it wasn't that long ago where we had those other seasons. So I think
we still have that.
Eventually, we will get back to that. I mean, we played Alaska, so I think eventually we will get back to that. What Union, Robert Morris, we played.
That was the Robert Morris tournament, and they were supposed to.
Oh, that's right.
They had one extra trip to Boston. I mentioned that Larson's first year they went to BC and Northeastern. That was part of a 4-year deal between those two schools where BC came 1 year for 2 games at St. Cloud. Then St. Cloud went out to Boston to play 1 game each. Northeastern came out, would have been the 1920 season. And so St. Cloud was supposed to go back out to Boston, would have been in the fall of 2020, but we obviously all know what happened then. I'm wondering, in order to get another deal to go there, you might have to set up another 4-year contract, which I hope they do. Like, it doesn't need to be BC and Northeastern. It could be BU. It could be,
play the long game. Have it be UConn. Let's play the long game here. Let's get a Husky tournament.
And as far as the WCHA, the old WCHA teams, I think the only one they haven't played is Michigan Tech. Speaking of Huskies, and that used to be a nice, cute little kind of rivalry with Michigan. And we did play them in the tournament that 1 year, I guess. But as far as on the schedule, that's a drivable trip too. And
wasn't that Judd Peterson who scored the game-winning goal in that game?
You might be right.
No, I don't remember.
I know that Brodzinski tied it up late. That was like a last-minute goal to tie it, to go in overtime. It was a breakaway because I remember the Michigan Tech defenseman took a dump at the line, and maybe it was Peterson. I can't remember, but that was a good game. But that's the only time they've played Michigan Tech since then. I do, like you said, I like the Husky on Husky action, and that would be a decent non-conference series to go to, because it seems like we've played Northern Michigan a bunch of times, like not just that first Larson year, but going back a little bit. I think they had another 2-year home and home series that they played with them too. So it seems like we get plenty of them, but haven't gotten any of Michigan Tech. So that would be nice.
Yes, that was Judd.
It was Peterson. Yeah, like 2 separate Judd Peterson drops on this podcast. This is we are living the dream.
Yep, exactly. So, and then I mean, I guess the elephant at the deck we got to get into here is just, God, that would have been so great, but I keep forgetting they don't play at the deck anymore. I am showing my age. Jeez,
I was wondering where you're going with that. I did
the elephant in Amsoil, I guess is what we can call it. Wisconsin, who I don't know, I guess kind of ripped last last episode, goes up and sweeps Duluth. And, Duluth was kind of maybe a surprise pick. I had them pick number 2 preseason. That's looking like a bad pick right now.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. This is one of those years where Duluth sleepwalks through the first half, and then they kick it into high gear and win a national title. So they will win a national title. Just have patience.
Just have patience. They lost their last 4. Obviously, they got swept in Mankato, and then now swept to Wisconsin, where they lost 2-0 and 3-0. But also Minnesota Duluth.
No, it was 4-2. I think that first game. They didn't get shut out twice, did they?
5-2.
Okay, but
and then 3-0.
But it's looking pretty obvious they're having scoring issues. I mean, they can't score, and with bringing guys like Howard in, thought that wasn't going to be as much of a problem as that has been sort of the issue with them in the past. If they have had an issue, it's maybe scoring and scoring depth. Mm-hmm. But and then transitioning to Stayskull as being their number 1 goaltender. I haven't watched enough of the games to make a bold statement about how well he's played, but I bet you they're kind of missing Fanti, or name any of the other, like Shepard or any of their other national title tested goalies that they've developed over the years. But yeah, I bet that they're sounding the alarms there, and it's going to be interesting. They got Cornell this weekend. Ivy's finally getting to it, as we mentioned. They're starting playing hockey for real. They've had some exhibition games here and there, but so Cornell playing their first games of the year, you wonder if it's rest or rust, but also having the opportunity to maybe, get a Duluth team that's down right now and licking its wounds. Might be a decent time for Cornell to start their season. We shall see. I mean, from St. Cloud's perspective, having Wisconsin win those games, hey, fine by me. Anything, we should root for Wisconsin. I mean, I don't really want to, but those wins will look better, as mentioned. With Mankato probably having a very good year this year, and St. Cloud sweeping them is going to look mighty good in the pairwise. Hey, we should want Wisconsin to win 25 games and make the tournament, because that makes those 2 wins in Madison look all that better. So, yeah, I'm not against that, but at the same time, St. Cloud's also got to play Duluth, so it's like you don't want Duluth to be too bad either. And I thought, on the whole, sort of another kind of underwhelming weekend for the conference. You had the Duluth getting swept, North Dakota getting 1 overtime win in Minneapolis, Omaha. Losing over. I think they both went to overtime there as well, losing 1 and winning 1 in overtime. CC getting manhandled at Arizona State. What else did we have? Western Michigan splitting with Notre Dame. Miami, give them props, sweeping Canisius. It's Canisius, but Miami's looking better than they have in years, based on their multiple wins here in October. But yeah, and Denver taking care of business with Providence, a win and then an overtime win. I'm not calling that a sweep, because you don't get the full pairwise points with an overtime win, but still a win and a overtime win, good result against a decent Providence team. So I guess not as bad as what it was last week for the NCHC, but as we mentioned, if the conference can get in, the only reason that the conference is going to be able to get in like 5 teams that it did last year was because the conference did so well in non-conference. Not looking like it's going to be as hot of a non-conference record as it was last year. So keep an eye on that. I mean, just expecting more from some of these, like Duluths and North Dakotas, with Quinnipiac, and then the Gophers this weekend, just getting 1 win out of those 4 games. So it's it's a development. This might be big reason, a big factor come tournament time, that the NCHC is not gonna have as good of a year as it has in years past.
Now I'm just doing a little bit of back of the napkin math here, but if I have this right, and if the CHN stats have it right, Minnesota Duluth has not scored an even strength goal since the second period against Arizona State.
Oh.
They have gone 264 minutes and 40 seconds without scoring a goal in even strength.
I'll take your word for it.
That's how bad the Bulldogs have been trying to get on the score sheet there, and even in strength, and the drought that we've had there. And again, not against premier teams. I mean, it's, that Wisconsin team, not being able to score an even strength goal on them over the weekend, that is definitely concerning.
Yeah, I would agree.
Did you have a thought on the mini line brawl, handshake brawl that happened in Omaha?
I did not see that. Which game was that?
That was after Sunday's game.
Okay, so I watched the end of it, and I just turned it off right after they scored the overtime goal. So
you turned it off.
I turned it off at just the wrong time. What we're talking like Hackstall, North Dakota Gophers? Good? Like we get flipping the birds at all, or what? How good was it?
I think we had some language from some of my sources down in Omaha / people on Twitter from Omaha. But yeah, so apparently kind of what stemmed from was Alaska's game-winning goal on Friday night, right?
I don't know why they didn't play Saturday. They don't have a football team, so I don't know why they didn't play on Saturday, but I digress.
There could have been another event going on.
Could have been a rodeo or something.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they apparently Alaska scored the game-winning goal that day and celebrated right in front of Omaha's bench.
I did see that, and I remember because I was laughing that Omaha lost. And then I'm like, oh, wow, there's like, and even like the refs were circling because they're like, what are you doing?
Yep.
That even carried over through the idle Saturday till the Sunday game. And then did they do
Omaha scored.
And we're going to do crotch chops right in front of the bench.
And then everybody went over in front of the bench over at Alaska and celebrated in front of them. And again, the refs circled up and tried to push them away. And they tried to usher Omaha back. And for some reason, they didn't just say, "Okay, we're done," and leave the ice. They still said, we should shake hands. And sure enough, some fisticuffs ensued there, and I think even like the athletic director or someone from Omaha walked out on the ice to say something. I don't know. Like
that's what it was when the guys in suits, either the coaches or athletic directors. I don't know if I've ever seen that, but when those guys are getting into it, that's when it gets good. This will teach me to turn off an Omaha game.
Always wait for the handshakes.
That's right.
You never know when anything's going to happen there. So, but yeah, like you said, overall, not a good showing on the weekend, for the NCHC. Kind of looking around here, we do open up conference play. We, as in the conference does, Denver and Miami, or Denver travels to Miami to play. Air Force plays Colorado College. Like you said, Ivy starts, so Cornell's playing. And then also, are we getting Brown? Does Brown?
Brown does play.
Or...
They got Yale home and home.
They got Yale. So we can see the Magic Brown voter that was not impressed with them last week's poll.
For my sources,
now impressed with them this.
My sources tell me that the Bears had a hell of a week in practice, and
there we go.
They are back on the board.
Back with in a fury, and then Omaha. They travel to Long Island. So again, they're non-conference, and then really getting tough there. But so that's kind of a quick look around.
Well, you may have missed perhaps the most intriguing one. Western Michigan
at Michigan.
Scheduled to play Michigan. So we'll see if that actually goes off. But
the ghost of Mel Pearson is going to have some shenanigans there.
Who was on the record saying that he really wants to be in the building this weekend. I would want that to happen.
Wait, what? Are you kidding me? He actually...
Did you read the infamous Rink Live interview with him?
No, I didn't want to give him a platform.
I don't blame you, but he mentioned, boy, I really want to show up there in Lawson. I'll give him credit if he tries, and if he survives, I would give him more credit. But there's a word in the English language called ballsy, and that would be ballsy.
Yep, very much so. And
you also forgot the one-off, the Hall of Fame game on Saturday in Vegas, North Dakota playing Arizona State. Just the one game there, but it's on the Strip. I believe it's in the Golden Knights arena. The last time that this is the second time that North Dakota has played in Vegas. They played the Gophers, 5 years ago or so, but that was at not the Golden Knights rink. I think they have like an AHL facility that they played at. So this one's at the NHL rink, and Arizona State kind of getting used to their new digs. North Dakota, as we mentioned, was able to salvage one of the overtime wins in against the Gophers, but struggling against Quinnipiac, and they're sort of finding their groove too. So I might check in on that game if I can. Last year, I know the NCHC TV carried that Penn State game with them, the Hall of Fame game in Nashville. So I'm assuming they're also going to cover that game or offer that game on NCHC TV. If they do, I'll maybe that'll be one of my iPad games that I'll cycle through. So it should be interesting to see that game. So yeah, it's weird that just the one conference matchup, Miami against Denver, the conference sort of kicks into high gear. I think everyone's in conference play next weekend, including, of course, Huskies at Denver. It'd be interesting from Miami's perspective. Like I said, it looks like they've shown some life that they haven't shown in years with, some wins with, over Canisius. And I think the one impressive win of the month was at Lowell, who's a decent team. But they're certainly not they still need to prove themselves, and what better way to prove themselves by playing well against Denver? If they can win one of those games, I'll be much more of a Miami believer. And it'll be interesting from Denver's perspective because obviously that's St. Cloud's opponent the week after. So I'll keep an eye on that game as well. But mostly that is the last sort of non-conference weekend for most of the teams, most of the conference, and should be some interesting offerings this weekend.
Sure enough. A couple of questions that we got. First from Nate Wells wants me to talk about the David Carl Safeway commercial, which, if you're not familiar, David Carl, coach of Denver, has, I don't know, maybe some kind of sponsorship deal or.
He's getting that NIL money, the name, image, and likeness.
With the Safeway, which is like apparently a regional grocery store, like a Colburn's or something like that.
I might have to recuse myself from this question because Safeway happens to give me a paycheck every week. So, I'm quite familiar with Safeway.
Gotcha.
It's a little more than a regional chain. It's Kroger, who's the number one grocery chain, just announced that they're going to buy Safeway Albertsons, which is like the number one chain west of the Rockies. It's West Coast and Southwest is basically where Safeway is, and Albertsons. There's
I didn't know it was. I guess I didn't know it was that big.
So when Kroger buys them out, and if that goes through, if that merger goes through, that'll be the number one grocery chain in the country. So Safeway's pretty big. I mean, it's big, and I was in Oregon before this. It was huge there. It's huge down here. One of the bigger grocery chains in this part of the country. But I did not see the David Carl ad. I'll have to check that out.
David Carl, he's got the Penrose cup in the cart, and he's filling up the cart and putting like heads of lettuce into the Penrose cup. And he's just so stiff and rigid, and he's got his his Denver logoed shirt on. It's that long sleeve tee with like the collar that's like almost turtleneck type, but still a quarter zip. He just looks stiff and rigid throughout the whole thing. It's on Denver's Denver hockey Twitter, and I'll send it to you as well. I'll send you the.
Yeah, I need to check that out.
I mean, it's not quite Ryan Suter Quick Trip bad, because David does a little.
That's quite the reference there.
He does the voiceover. He's not like talking a lot throughout, like Ryan Suter did when it was like, "I'm Ryan Suter. When I'm hungry, I like to fill up at Quick Trip." It's just something that was terrible. Wasn't that bad, but seeing David Carl go ahead and do that was just it made me smile, made me chuckle a little bit. So, Go Huskies Woo had a couple of questions. Are the Huskies a legit number 2, or who cares because polls are useless? Are we a legit number 2? Maybe, but probably not. But I don't know exactly who's better. Like, I feel like now we can play with anybody, and if our defense and goalie keeps it up, like, we're gonna be a really tough team to beat. So maybe we are.
Yeah,
but
I don't know about 2, but I'm more so. Yeah, who cares about polls at this time of year, especially? Who cares about polls? Let's just win the games.
Except Brown.
Yeah, just win the games or win practices, and the polls. Exactly. You will get your respect as due in the polls.
What would be 8-0 going into Denver? I think we will. I guess we didn't really get to predictions about the Bemidji. I do think we're going to sweep.
I mean, we should. I just have a hunch. I just have a bad hunch about this. They'll win the home game. The Huskies will win the home game. I just have a bad hunch about this at Bemidji game. And like I said, on paper, it should be like a 5-2 win for the Huskies. But something about it doesn't. I just don't have a great feeling about it. Sorry to be honest.
And then are the Beavers legit? And it's early to say. They might be. I haven't seen a lot of them play. When I had the Flow Sports, I didn't get a chance to really watch any other games. So excuse me for the bad show prep. But on paper, we they might be pretty good. They had a good series against Arizona State, which Arizona State I know gets a lot of love right now around the country. So we'll see. But it's a series that I think that the Huskies should sweep. So, goal game pace is hard to keep, but is it too early to think Crookshank is going to have a really big year? I think he's going to have a big year. Will he get to 20 goals? I don't know.
We had Fitzgerald. I think I misspoke last episode, or maybe the episode before. I shortchanged him. He was the leader in points with 36 last year. So let's set that as the par. Is he going to exceed 36 points?
If I were, yes.
I mean, certainly the pace that he's at now, I don't think he can keep up that pace. But
correct.
I think the Fitzgerald role is exactly what he is filling into, and he's outproducing the Fitzgerald role this year. I just hesitate because he's been a 20-point scorer at most in his 4 years. But he's already halfway there, and we're 6 games deep into this season. Yeah. I said that after the St. Thomas series, which was not sort of before his coming out party, if you will, with the Wisconsin and Mankato weekends. I said that he has the chance to, I believe I said he's got the chance to be the MVP of this team. And I'll stick by that. I don't know if 36 points or not. I think that's right in that ballpark, though. That's where I'm going to go with, and he's got a chance to exceed 40 points. If that line clicks, he's getting short. He's getting penalty kill time. Has he really been getting much power play time here and there? I mean, he could factor in more on that too. So it's funny. Have we had a 40-point score? Who was the last one? Maybe Newell in that 2018-19 season. It seems like it's been a while since we've cracked the 40-point mark, and a lot of that is based on it's a tough schedule, and it's difficult to get 40 points in this league. Easier task. We mentioned like Bemidji's got a guy that the Sillinger was 47 points last year, and Mankato had a bunch of guys over 40 points last year. Easier to do that in a league like the CCHA than it is in the NCHC, but this has got the potential right now. And the fact it's just great that Crookshank line is still, again, in quotes, the number 2 line on this team. And we're talking about a possible 40-point season out of one of them. So whatever it is, I do think that he's got the chance. He's got a chance.
2018, 2019, we had Newell at 47, Blake Lazat at 42, Robbie Jackson at 40.
3 guys before I forgot about Lazat. I shouldn't have, but yeah. So that's the last time that they've cracked 40. I think a decent chance this year to do so. But even
2015, 2016, Coastal had 54.
Wow. What about
Bennick had 48. Russell had 41. And then Jimmy Murray had 39. And
what did Brodzinski have?
We didn't have Brodzinski that year.
15, 16. Oh, okay. This was the Fair 7 State year. I was 1 year behind that. I'm still thinking about that Michigan Tech game. Still have that in my mind.
Oh, sure enough, yeah.
God, so he left after that. Yeah, that's right. Okay. And then Easton would have came in the year after that? God, my Brodzinski's, the timeline is off in my head.
Yeah, Easton came in 17, 18.
17, 18. Okay, so there's 2 years in between there.
Yep.
Interesting how your mind can.
Because remember, there's a Michael in there.
There is the Michael in there, and Bryce is still at the Gophers. Yeah, he watched it this weekend. So yeah.
But the thing that gives me a little bit more, I guess, at ease, I guess you can say, in the fact that he can produce at that level still is like you have a line mate in Micah Miller who is your buzzsaw who does everything at 100%. He never takes the shift off. He's never going to lollygag. And you've had Kupka, who has really come on as his own as a player, who I feel is getting better every weekend. So, I mean, yeah, if you keep this up, I do see that, yeah, there is that potential to get that 40 points, even though, yeah, it may be a lot more than his averages that he's had. But I think also we have a lot more weapons on this team than those Colorado College teams. So, and I think that Motzko did bury him quite a bit in situations in Minnesota last year.
Yeah, Kupka's an X factor too. Like if he's going to be the guy to put in the greasy goals, that'll mean a lot of assists for Crookshank because they'll be probably on one of the 2 assists of a lot of Kupka's goals. at least even strength goals. So that's the next factor too.
Yeah. It seems to have a knack for finding soft spots around the net, which is where a lot of our Fitzgerald is coming in. And a good fit with the line mates who work and battle for pucks in the corners and behind the net and usually come out with the puck. It's kind of like a line that is really that kind of grind them out type line, but at the same time they still score. Where sometimes it's those grinded out type of lines that kind of wear down the defense, and then you get the line change while still having possession of the puck. Then your real scorers come on and put it in the net when the defense is tired. That's kind of what you think of when you have kind of like a grinded out line, but this grinded out line is one that's really been able to kind of put pucks away and create that space. I mean, even though that was Micah's first goal of the season, he's had a number of assists, and I think he's been playing some really good hockey. He's had a lot of shorthanded chances that I feel it's only a matter of time before they click. And I think it's only a matter of time with a lot of our other people who aren't scoring goals. I mean, yeah, we can talk about, Cronulla or Mietten and that they haven't scored a lot of goals this year, but they're still averaging about a point a game because they're still creating chances. So I'm not too concerned about them. So is it too early to book flights for Tampa?
Well, not necessarily. Tampa's lovely most times of year, except hurricane season. You can always book a flight to Tampa and have a pretty decent time down there. But the thing about the Frozen Four,
I say do it. Let's go.
Yeah, if you got a good flight, if he's actually if this person is actually serious, you got to ask yourself: would you go to a Frozen Four if the Huskies weren't there? Like, would you enjoy just going to a Frozen Four? I have never been to one. I mean, I was someone that marketed themselves as a traveling fan. Never been to a Frozen Four. Obviously on the bucket list.
It's a lot of fun.
It's just never.
It's a lot of fun because everybody treats it as it's your yearly tradition to go to the Frozen Four, no matter where it is. So it's cool to see all the jerseys. Like, I've obviously only been to the 2013 in Pittsburgh. Was the only one that I've been to. So, and then Dan Jacobson, friend of the show, a big Minnesota Duluth fan, says, any recommendation for winter activities that don't involve hockey? Asking for a friend.
You're not saying that he's given up already on the season, have you?
Yeah, hey, that was just his question. He's asking for a friend, he said. So
I heard sledding. Sledding is fun.
Ah, there we go. Sledding. You got some hills in Duluth, right?
Right. You can just
go
down
like a lake, actually.
You can go down like 2nd Avenue, grease up one of those sleds, just slide right off like eggs in a
You can just
Teflon
slide
pan.
right off, right onto Lake Superior, and then stop when you hit Wisconsin. And
That's
then
right.
take the lift bridge back.
That's right.
So any other kind of closing thoughts before we wrap things up?
I thought this was a good show. Said, hope the Huskies savor this sweep over the Mavs. But keep the heads. Don't get the inflated heads. Don't get the inflated egos. And take these Beavers seriously. Get the job done. That's my motto.
Yep.
Get the job done. Beating Bemidji's never sexy. Just get her done.
All right. Well, that about does it. So I'm Weldie. You can reach me at More Clappers, MOAR, More Clappers. Andrew, you can reach him at our email address and sponsorships as well.
Yes.
So if you're a sponsor.
Again, I'm trying to hustle, getting these weekly spots out. So if any advertising inquiries, you can direct them to Huskies Hockey Podcast at gmail.com. If anyone is planning on going to Denver next weekend, I will be there. So if you wanted to meet the celebrity co-host of this podcast, shoot me an email and we can hopefully make that happen. So I'll post that or blast that next week too. But if you are planning on being there, I'd love to see fellow Husky fans and meet their acquaintance.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Until next time, go Huskies.
Woo!